Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap here on March the 25th of 2019. I'm Nick here alongside Chris, and I'm invisible right now. It's okay. Don't be afraid. I'm not a ghost. It's still me. I'm not dead yet. I'm astral projecting. Just think of it that way.
Ooh, you got the sheep talisman.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
it's so
or
nice. Go ahead.
possibly a Millennium item. I forget what the Millennium items do. They're all very nebulous, honestly.
Yeah, the scales are the ones I'm like, do you do anything? Who has you?
I pass judgment.
Like,
I mean, that's cool and all, but like, can you is there another personality inside of you? No, only 3 of them do that.
I'm like, to be fair, a lot of these already kind of pass judgment. Everyone seems to have the ability to do these punishment games. Hold on, Nick. I need to draw a card right now. You can't see it, but I actually have Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I actually got fingerless gloves. And
So
I'm
properly.
Yeah, and I'm doing the 2-fingered draw, and I'm gonna fight you with Galaxy Eye Cipher Blade Dragon.
Okay.
Your move, Nick.
Well, I'm pretty sure you can't summon that card, just by playing it on your first turn from your hand like that. So
I don't believe you.
I win by forfeit because you cheated. So yeah.
No, we're playing under early Yu-Gi-Oh rules where
you
nothing
just
was
do whatever Takahashi could think of.
Where there was nothing that really stopped you from doing whatever you wanted.
And the game was super lame. Oh, we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh today, guys. This is something that's been a long time coming, not just for like Weekly Manga Recap, but because the Yu-Gi-Oh manga has been basically the big blind spot for me in terms of my Yu-Gi-Oh knowledge for forever. Ever since I discovered the series. I remember back in the day when, English Shonen Jump was still a magazine, seeing a couple of chapters in like a friend's magazine once, but that's like almost the only experience I've ever actually had with the Yu-Gi-Oh manga before we started covering it for this recommendation. And here we are now to talk about this bizarre series. Because it is a bizarre series.
It is.
It's really strange.
And in fact, it's interesting you say the word bizarre because reading this, you could very easily see that Takahashi is very inspired by Araki and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, just in terms of having these weird scenarios that the characters get into, all the weird, crazy poses that they kind of do. There's definitely
and the intensity and conviction with which they do horrible things, horrible and weird things to each other.
There's so much to say, and look, there's a lot of this series that we covered because we took a look at essentially what is actually it's actually a good point to specify that everything we read using the Shonen Jump Vault, which you can get with just a Shonen Jump subscription. So if you're interested in hearing us discuss this and you're like, I don't want to read Yu-Gi-Oh again or anything like that,
for just $2 a month, then you can get access to every single Yu-Gi-Oh chapter that's ever been released and every single spin-off manga that Yu-Gi-Oh has ever released. You can do with the manga versions of GX, 5Ds, Arc 5, Zexal. I'm sure Vrains, whenever that gets a manga adaptation, you can read that one too with a subscription. As well as Yu-Gi-Oh! R, and all 3 sub-series that Viz decided to split the main Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga into, which is actually a very useful way of actually kind of like pacing yourself through it, honestly. I actually really do like the way that they did it, because it's like, this is the stuff before what happens in the anime, and this is the stuff at the end of the anime that you don't remember.
Yeah. So we read through Yu-Gi-Oh! What's called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, which covers the entire Duelist Kingdom and then Battle City tournaments, and then Yu-Gi-Oh! Millennium World, which handles the actual plot. gets that kind of pushed out of the way.
It's amazing how much of the series, like actual important events, can just be like covered in those first and last 50 chapters.
Yeah.
If the rest of it's just like, I mean, this is where all the card playing happens, but it's like, how much of importance actually well, I mean, each big arc introduces a millennium item, I guess, but
it does, and I suppose that does progress us forward, but there is definitely something. Look, we both watched the Yu-Gi-Oh anime as it aired, and it's no secret that we have like these very cherished childhood memories of it. I say childhood, we both were probably like 12 when we started watching it.
Pre-teen and teen years, let's say, yeah.
But we have those strong memories of it, and obviously reading it is this manga is a way of kind of getting back into it and enjoying it. But really, what this experience has reshaped so much of the context you now have for the series, not just in terms of like, oh, now I understand why attacking the moon to destroy all of your water, leaving your monsters defenseless, was actually far more true to the Yu-Gi-Oh manga than like any other conclusion to a duel in the series ever. But also you're like, holy shit, my perception of Kaiba is massively changed. And at first you're like, he's kind of just an asshole. Then you're like, no, he's a psychopath. He just gets a redemption arc later on.
He is a basically a sociopath to start things off. I mean, it's probably the part of the series that was interesting to me reading through it was the way in which parts of the manga that were before the card game, what do you want to call it? Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game, Duel Monsters, Magic and Wizards, as it was originally called. It was originally, for those of you who don't know, because everyone kind of, now knows of Yu-Gi-Oh as, the series that is about the card game of the same name. Everything is resolved through card games. In the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga, everything was resolved through games. It's amazing how much people want to play games in this series, but that's just kind of like the world that people live in. They resolve their differences through battling it out through these games that often are just made up on the fly, honestly. Sometimes it's, like a game that exposes someone's flaws, and sometimes it's just like, here's a board game that Kazuki Takahashi made half the rules for and didn't really take into account that a game would actually have to be balanced in order to be made. It's like that's not the point. The point is that you spend 3 chapters on this one game, Yugi wins it, and that's it. You never are supposed to see it again, which is why the original card game is so completely broken and why they had to backwards engineer it in order to make it into a proper trading card game.
There's a moment when he's playing capsule monsters or monster capsules. I think it's capsule monsters.
Monsters.
He does a move, and you're like Yugi's getting his shit pushed in. Because, like, on the surface, you're like, this game is horrifically designed. It's essentially a gumball machine way of battling creatures that have a number scale between 1 to 5, 5 being the strongest, but also being the rarest. So Yugi's side has like 1 4, I think, and then all the rest of things are 1s and 2s, and everything on Mokuba's sides are 5s and 4s. And if a higher number comes across a stronger or a lower number, it just automatically wins. And you're like, well, mathematically looking at it, there's no way Yugi can win. He'll never beat a 5. And
now hold on a moment there, Mokuba. It turns out that I have the powers of pulling moves out of my ass.
It's like, didn't you know if this 1-star lines up in a diagonal pattern, it kills all monsters it comes across? You're like,
why is that a 2-star monster?
I'm like you want to raise your hand like, Judge? Why didn't they write anything about this on it? All I did was open the egg and I saw a dinosaur. How was I supposed to know that it has this, like, fucking, your thing moves like a bishop and murders everything in its wake?
I mean, there are certain parts of it that I think are, that are cool in concept.
Hmm.
You know, it's like, oh, you know, it's like a combination of a collectible card game and chess. They keep calling it like Capsule Monsters Chess. You
Yeah.
know, you can move your monsters in a certain pattern and each of them has different strength. It's like, okay, that's a cool kind of gimmick for, you know, a game. Not in addition to monsters having different strengths, they also have different movement paths. That's cool. And then yeah, he just pulls out, it's like, yes, I know that this is a weak nothing of a monster, but it also has this one turn kill ability that Mokuba should definitely have known about if he's the local champion or what the hell ever.
Yeah, the fucking National Grand Prix Capsule Monster Champion. Uh, there's
Also, by the way, Mokuba way more of a little bastard than in the
oh
anime.
yeah, he is a super big prick. And reading that part gives you so much more context for why after the Duelist Kingdom arc is done, there's like 3 episodes spent learning fucking dungeon dice monsters, and you're like, why are we watching this? And then you read
Because
the
this is
manga,
what
and
they would do all the time.
you're like, oh, this is what Takahashi seemingly wants to do. He's like, I'm done with the card game. Can't we play dice now? I made up 3/4 of the rules for this.
I actually like, you know, put effort into how to design this one. It's like, yeah, but it's lame. I'm sorry, dude, but it's just, you know, way more satisfying to be like, I summon a strong monster and then power it up with a spell card. That's the only thing that he thought of is like, you have monsters and you have spell cards and use the spell cards to make your monster stronger. That's as far as he thought the original design of the game through.
I would be curious to see at one point if there were any card games that did inspire him in some
Oh, I'm
way.
sure. I think that Magic the Gathering probably inspired it to an extent. I mean,
When did you the manga start?
1995.
Okay, so yeah, that actually would have been right there at the same time because they do mention that the card game it's inspired from is from America, so that
Mhm.
does make sense.
Yeah. And you know, so many monsters and using spells to enhance them. It makes if you consider it in that perspective, like early Yu-Gi-Oh is much more similar to Magic the Gathering than what Yu-Gi-Oh actually became with the more different card types and stuff. But anyway, um the thing that really got me as I was reading, especially the early parts of the series, because once you get into the Duelist Kingdom onward, it's kind of like just, you know, it was more just recapping for me, or
Yeah.
not recapping, but reliving the series. Like, okay, I've seen all this stuff, and a lot of it is kind of what I expected it to be. You know, just a much darker, less. I don't want to say less cheesy because this is a plenty cheesy manga, but less kid friendly kind of
Mhm.
version of events, with much more insidious, just psychopathic characters
Yeah.
throughout. Um, Imagine if you've ever, you know, seen like, you know, season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Imagine taking that, you know, kind of tone and applying it to the bigger series. And that's kind of what the manga is like. There was almost nothing that happened in the series that, you know, really took me by surprise. Like, oh, I can't believe that happened. Although there was a surprise in the sense of I could have sworn that Johnny Steps was a filler character. No, he's in here. um, but the early parts of the series, it's interesting to see how certain events and character interactions from the anime, the second anime, uh, were taken or inspired from those early parts when the card game was not as big a part of the series.
Mhm.
Like there's this whole big arc, not big arc, but you know, 12, 15, 20 chapter arc introducing Bakura to the group. And it's a long, drawn out miniature role playing game version of the duel that Yugi and or Yami and Bakura have, where the gang get put into their favorite cards. Instead, they're put into miniatures, and they have to go through this RPG with their souls on the line. So that whole thing is like, okay, inspires that part of the anime. The big side arc that served as a filler during the middle of Battle City, where you know you learn about Kaiba's past and how he got adopted and stuff. It's like, well, that's from the manga, the entire way that he, got adopted and rose to prominence in the company and stuff like that. Nothing about some, little blue-haired, brother that he had, but whatever. The whole relationship between himself and Gozaburo is like it's from the manga. So it was interesting to see that. It's like how much of the early parts of the manga the anime was later able to draw inspiration from in order to create other stuff. And I think that kind of shows more of like it turns out that there was less that they just made up whole cloth than you would think for these filler bits.
Yeah, there's a lot of small stuff that definitely has changed. And it's kind of cool seeing the stuff in Duelist Kingdom in particular is where a lot of the big changes are. Like just the very notion that Joey and Yugi don't duel in it. Like there was a whole giant fight that they had in the manga or in the anime that as the finals for the Duelist Kingdom for who would fight Pegasus. And there was always kind of this conceit that you as an audience member had where you're like, I mean, I know Yugi's going to win. I don't for a moment buy that Yugi's going to win and be like, sorry, Joey, I'm keeping the prize money for myself. Looks like your blind ass sister's just going to have to get used to it. You should have that you're like, no matter what, he's still going to give him the money. And the manga just does that. It's just like Joey beats Bandit Keith, who, by the way, gets fucking murdered afterwards.
He doesn't show up as a rare hunter later.
In one of the most brutal scenes in the manga, he gets punishment game for his finger to turn into a gun and kills himself. It's fucking hardcore. But Joey beats Bandit Keith, and then he's like, I did it. That was essentially my finals. Like, good luck, Yugi. Thanks. You're giving me the prize money. Awesome. And then they just go right into the fight with Pegasus, and I'm like, that's way better.
That makes way more sense. Why would we fight each other?
There was 7 episodes in the fucking anime to be like, why are they fighting each other? They're friends.
No, it turns out, Joey, that when you used your time mage, it also powered up my monsters. This is bullshit, you.
God damn this fucking time mage and its nebulous power set.
Also, it doesn't really make sense. You flip a coin with the real one, but it's got like a 1 in 3 chance of getting you the roulette. But it always seems to work when I use it. I don't know.
And there's other small stuff too. Tristan, you honestly, you read the manga version of Duelist Kingdom, you're like, why is he a character? Because there's not even like the Rex Raptor quasi subplot thing of like him and Joey kind of having to fight, but then their monsters symbolically power each other up to help him like get an advantage. They're just like, fucking, it's gone. Who cares? he does nothing. The whole fucking thing. He wears a cheerleading headband and that's it. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm very okay with this as well. This is another strong decision by the manga not to include this.
Although much better character in early parts of the manga than the anime. Like if you watch the anime, it's like, what the fuck did Tristan even do? And then if you read the manga, it's like, oh, he's like a smarter version of Joe, basically.
Yeah. But I think my favorite change that Duelist Kingdom had, if only because it made me have to try to stop to remember it, is they still do the fight where Yugi has to fight someone who's using Kaiba's deck as in kind of like a fuck you thing. And in the fight, I was like, yeah, all this is reminding me of the fight that they had. It's like a ventriloquist puppet instead of the normal thing. But right. It gets to the point where
ghost clown guy.
Yeah. So you get to the point where the guy summons Blue Eyes and it's gonna kill Yugi. But in this one, the Blue Eyes dissipates because Kaiba has woken up. And like the soul of the Blue Eyes vanishes away, and you're like, "Oh, okay." And I was like,
as opposed to
how did they do that in the manga? It's like, yeah, he hacked the program to lower its attack, and I was like, "This is stupid."
And then like the second time he couldn't lower it in time or something like that, but then he went Yugi, and then it just blows up, and he's like, "It seems that Kaiba called out to the Blue Eyes." Yambi, you bullshit artist.
I think here's the thing.
Just put an equip spell on your Dark Magician. That's all you need to do.
What are those? I need room for more beaver warriors. How will I put Gazelle, the mystical king of beasts, in my deck if I have equip spells in its place?
Is this when you have the fusion that turns it into like a monster that can at least kill some? No! I don't even have Baphomet yet.
No, polymerization is just reserved for lightning my mammoth graveyard into things and slowly killing them. No, but I honestly
forgot about that. Because your Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is not an undead type.
It makes everything that's Duelist Kingdom so much better. Because everything now makes sense. When you watch the cartoon as a kid, you're like, I get that he was making it up at the time, but none of these rules make sense. So, like, all the things he's doing are
at
so
the same time, you're looking through the game, and you're like, oh, these cards do what Yugi's do.
Yeah. And then you see how this works. You're like, that doesn't make sense. And then you read the original part, and you're like, of course it doesn't, because none of his chapters like resolutions make sense. The entire kind of premise of Yu-Gi-Oh! The manga is like Yugi either wins by dumb luck or just by outright cheating at times. And there's like a point, like one of the earliest fucking things he gets into is like, I challenge you to a game where we both roll a 6-sided dice. Whoever rolls highest loses. And if we tie, you automatically win. I'll start. I rolled a 6. And the guy's like, I don't want to fucking play this game, but I can't lose. So fuck it. Throws dice, hits Yugi in the face. He's like, there, I won. Get out of my face. Yugi's like, see, the dice broke in half when it hit my face. You rolled a 7. Punishment game. You're like, what the fuck?
Hang on, wait a minute.
Like, stop this for a second.
Now I'm going to curse you to be constantly under an illusion or some other bullshit that will get you killed.
My absolute favorite is there's a very long, you talked about earlier, the Bakura like Dungeons and Dragons game. And there's so much craziness that already happens in it. There's a moment where Bakura takes over and stabs his own hand through a spire to keep himself from rolling. But it all comes down to the final roll. And in this, basically rolling low is how you actually succeed. So Bakura's like, Dark Bakura's like, I roll, and he gets a double critical, and they're like, you lose. Bakura's like, no, and he like transplants himself, his soul into the dice, and the dice explode. And Yugi's like, your dice are gone. No dice, no rolls. Looks like you lose, idiot.
And Dark Bakura's like, that's bullshit. You saw the result and it was, oh fuck.
I don't see a dice anymore.
Like, what double one? I don't see a double one.
Like some dude, like he was just scrambling to get to other dice. Like, well, let me just roll again or something. Like,
no mulligans. I'm just going to assume you rolled double hundreds.
Oh, don't you know? If your dice explode, you lose the game.
If the dice explode, we have to presume that all 7 sides came up at once.
Yeah, and you're like, this makes so much sense when you get to like, oh, I just launched my Gaia the Fierce Knight into the flotation ring of your castle, thus dropping it all on all of your creatures who are stuck behind the yellow luster shield you put up. Obviously, that's the chain of events that wins me this. You're like, this makes perfect sense.
So, according to Takahashi, he had originally been planning to use dual monsters like twice in the series. Both times when Kaiba shows up. The first time he just shows up for a short little story where he tries to steal Yugi's grandfather's rare Blue Eyes White Dragon. He ends up stealing it and like cheating to use it in his duel against Yugi, and then it doesn't attack, and Yugi's like, because it has the soul of my grandfather. It won't betray its master. That's why it won't obey you. And then he wins the duel. So okay, whatever. He cheated again.
Whatever.
But then they go through this long process of just getting to another duel, which is the first time that Exodia gets used. And you can tell that, like, you know, Takahashi was just making shit up because it's like, yeah, if you gather all 5 parts of Exodia, it summons Exodia and it has infinite attack power. It's like, that's different from how it actually is in the game. But anyway, and it's kind of weird to me that Takahashi has said that, the response to the game, the positive feedback he got from people who were really interested in the card game when it showed him in the manga, it makes me wonder if that outpouring came after that first game, and that was why he made such a second one, and then if that kind of fed into itself, and that's why he made it just the focus of the series, especially because it's not too long. It's basically just a couple of chapters and then the Bakura thing, and then it's like, and now Duelist Kingdom. Like, that's only a couple of months after that second duel that it's like, okay, the series is just about duel monsters now. So it does make me wonder about the exact order of events that things got decided like that.
There's definitely an interest that I have in trying to find out at what point, because I presume at some point Takahashi just sort of signed over the rights to be like, yeah, you could design a game around this. I guess you're gonna have to actually make it work. And then they came in and were like,
first signed it to, it didn't work because that was Bandai's version of the game, and it was also terrible. So.
But like when you look at eventually when they came in, they're like, okay, so the stars should actually mean something. You had to like tribute summon to get bigger things out. You could attack people's life points directly, things like that. Like all those rules kind of come in during Battle City. And I wonder if those were rules that he was told, like, hey, the people who are going to make the real card game desperately need this to be balanced. So could you put these rules in instead of like, I don't know, well, I have a water monster, and your lightning sword deals 10,000 more damage.
It gets a field power bonus.
Oh my goodness! There's so much of the absurdity to it, and I love it. I honestly like the manga more before the Duelist Kingdom stuff happens, because there's a certain insanity that is difficult to capture once the duel monsters stuff happens. It does still crop up. I tweeted out earlier, like, the shot of Kaiba being like, slit my throat with your card, Yugi, I'm about to leap off the side of this building. But one of my favorite moments is this long arc leading up to the second fight with Kaiba, where Kaiba sends them through the Death Tea, which is like a 5-round gauntlet of games designed to just murder Yugi and his friends.
You call them games. Only 2 of them are games, Chris.
All of them are outright basically things that are designed to murder Yugi and his friends. And my favorite one is like the whole framing of this is like Kaiba's opened up Kaiba World, or whatever theme park name it has. And it's free for the kids because Kaiba wants kids to be happy. So a bunch of kids are going in, and everyone thinks Kaiba's a change man. And then very quickly they find out he's not, as he sets up all these different events. And they get to one that sends them to a haunted house. And you find out Kaiba...
With the Chop Man!
You find out Kaiba has gone out, found, and recruited a serial killer.
Like Jason Voorhees, basically.
To be the murder mascot of this park who gets to murder people within it. And you're like, you just sit there and you're like, how much fucking work must have had to go in to finding this serial killer before the police did, slowly convincing him to join this amusement park, and then everything else that has to go into like setting up a room of oil that they'll fight over chainsaws on chains on. You're like, this is so astoundingly dumb and beautiful, and I love every second of it.
I mean, you could have just gotten a gun, Kaiba.
Yeah, like I'm like, if you just wanted to kill him, you should have flipped a coin and been like, you lose. You're like, I didn't even call it. Boom, and he's dead.
By the way, interesting tidbit that early parts of the manga are where certain Yu-Gi-Oh monster cards came from, including Zombie the Dark and Chopman the Desperate Outlaw. Those are effect monsters in the game.
Yeah, and you can definitely see it, because like every part of Yu-Gi-Oh has all these weird, crazy monster designs that you're like, like all these feel like they're from Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
I really, it's tough because there's part of me that's just going to be like, yeah, once you get into the Duelist Kingdom stuff, you're kind of following it beat for beat, and it's fine, it's good. It's, it does make you appreciate a lot of the small touches. Like Takahashi, despite not being particularly clever at resolutions to his puzzles, is still really good at like creating great dramatic character beats. Like, I still have like a moment when I'm like, yo, it's super dope that Mai drops off that fucking like the right hand of the king card for Joey before he gets eliminated. Like, there's just small little moments like that. You're like, that's a cool moment. That's really well done. Like, I can't see in Yugi's mind because his friends are blocking it from me. Like, stuff that's like, this is cheesy and dopey, but it's awesome in the same way. Like, those are great. And it's something that is just enjoyable to go through. But ultimately, I'm so happy to have read the start of it because it's so absurd. There's so many crazy. Oh, yeah. He like the level of which he starts really punishing people is so wildly inconsistent too. Like, I think it's like right before he punishes like a mass serial killer who's trying to hold people captive, he's like, "You make people listen to your karaoke too long. Punishment game." You'll hear nothing but static noise for the rest of your life. Like, shit, dude. He's
Jesus
16.
Christ, you made that guy basically deaf.
He's 16. You didn't want to give him a shot to turn his life around. And when they just start punching that one professor out, he's lost like 17 teeth by the end of it. He's like, where all my teeth go? Like, sorry.
He couldn't control himself, guys. He was being mind controlled.
You were a zombie for a little bit. My bad, dude.
Oh well.
Oh, that's actually.
Oh man.
B Panade reminds me of maybe the best one, because there's one where you're like, that dude's dead, and his crime is so insignificant. When they go to the school festival, and everyone from the school festival is like, "Oh man, I'm super excited for the class thing we set up." And then some like older classmates like, "We're taking your spot, fuck off." And Yugi's like, "I'll get revenge for you." So they go to like, they have like nitroglycerin in an ice hockey putt that they skate across a grill with each other. And eventually Yugi like gets it. So he hits it so hard, it breaks under the shock of it and drops the nitroglycerin and explodes. You're like, that kid's dead. That kid's dead because he was a little bit of a mean jerk on school festival day.
Oh my God. So I have to say that honestly, I am glad that eventually Yu-Gi-Oh! Just switched to just being about the card game, because some of the games that Takahashi thinks up are lame as shit. Like, Yugi and Jonochi and Honda are like 15, 16. Yugi looks like a little shrimp, but these other guys were his bullies before. And they play a game together, I shit you not, which is each of you make a bingo board with numbers from 1 through 50. And then when the results of the school exam come out, you go to look at the top 50 results of the test takers, and then depending on who is a girl or a boy, you fill out your bingo board with red and black, and whoever gets the most vertical and horizontal and diagonal lines wins. It's like, this is bullshit. It's lame. You fucking losers.
They're so excited to go, and like, you almost sit there, you're like, well, that just sounds ridiculous. But then you forget the other game that was attached to it was just like
in the same chapter,
Tamagotchi.
Well,
separate, by the way, from the regular Tamagotchi.
Where, like, yeah, you fill out your profile, and then if someone else has a match, then they beep around each other. It's like, that's just like a Tinder profile. That's not a game. And then there was
that's another one where like the person who gets punished is very much not like as justified as the punishment he gets, because the guy's like, hey, you can't use fucking electronics on school premises during school hours.
She was also threatening to expel them for no reason, so...
Yes, but the initial thing is like, hey, you can't have that out there. Give me that. He's like, what are you doing to Taya? He's like, I'm going to see to it.
This is a gift from Anzu. You can't take this from me. It's like, I mean, it's contraband. I mean, I'm a teacher and you're a student and, you know, whatever. And
I was like, also, if you had just kept it in your book bag, no one would really have needed to know about this.
It was tucked in his shirt, I guess, but still.
Yeah.
So I have to say that the other really stupid, lame thing in the same little set of chapters as those two was Yugi wanting to play a matching game, but apparently not having cards. And so he draws little symbols on his fucking socks.
Oh, right.
And lays a bunch of them on the floor and tries to flip 2 of them at the same time to improve his sixth sense. It's like, this is lame.
Like,
why didn't you draw hearts on your socks, you fucking loser?
Now I know why everyone thinks you're a nerd, because you are one. You know that poor stupid Hanasaki kid whose dad had to pay bullies to pretend to get beat up by him so he'd have more confidence? That kid is cooler than you are. And I presume that's why he never shows up again.
I always assumed that the thing was like, it's like, yeah, you know, for the most part, Yugi's this little fucking dork, but also fucking Duel Monsters takes over the world and he's the king of games. And so, you know, he doesn't usually get portrayed in that light of being this nerdy fucking kid. But then it's just like, I know, I'll flip socks over and try and get out of it. Oh my god. Get a video game.
Just reminded me of another amazing moment when there's like a criminal bomb person
Oh my god.
and like they're at an amusement park and Teia's like goes on the Ferris wheel and then like it starts going and like Yugi's like, oh, I guess she's on it, and then the cops get like a call and they're like, oh no, the bomb person's here and he's threatening us. He has a card playing gimmick. And then he like puts the phone away. He's like, does anyone around here particularly good at playing card games? Like just open source. Like, can anyone figure out this cryptic card game puzzle before the bombs go off?
And you know what? It's not a skill-based game. It's all luck.
It's entirely random.
It's like, it's portrayed as being like solitaire, but even solitaire, there is an element of strategy to it. You've got to make decisions based off the options that you have. In this one, it's just like, whichever card you draw, you put it in the pile of matching cards, and then whenever one of the force of a set gets together, then something happens. And it's like, okay, so Yugi has to match up 4 kings in order before he matches up too many others, because these cars on this Ferris wheel are rigged to explode. So he has to get the 4 kings before he gets the one that Anzu's in, and that's it. And he does. It's like, oh, it's a good thing that the great card player Yugi Moto was here to randomly draw cards in the right order.
There's a moment when you had to sit there and you're like, I understand that this is a manga about games, but there's some elaborate hilarity to like, there's a bomb terrorist who's threatening to blow up the park, but he's required us to play an elaborate game. Also, Yugi doesn't have a friend within the police department, so I, as the police detective, shall announce to everyone in the park that this event is happening, and I need the help of a skilled gamer to get us through this.
By the way, speaking of Anzu, in that chapter in particular, I knew that Teiya was considerably, less sexualized in like the English version of the anime. I knew that they, downplay like there's like, a flashback in the anime where like, a guy tries to like blackmail her into, taking naughty photos of her. Her attractiveness is played up more in the original version, blah, 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 all that stuff. She's just there to be the hot girl in the manga. It's honestly really skeevy at points. Like it gets to a point where it's like, oh, she's just there to be the girl for these guys to creep on. They go through that entire death tea thing that kind of sets up for them with this baby Herman character who is Honda's nephew. And he's just this little kid in like a duck themed onesie who's supposed to be like 1, but speaks perfect. He speaks like an adult and is just constantly trying to sit in Anzu's lap, grope Anzu's boobs, all this stuff.
Yeah, it's like,
and
you need to specify that it's not like even like an innocent baby
no,
strike fan.
He's like, she's hot.
He's like, take off your shirt, toots.
I want to breastfeed off of yous, but not in a way that actually gives me nutrition. I just want to suck on them baps.
I just want to eat the girls.
And his big heroic moment, by the way, is like, I have to save Anzu, so I'm going to crawl on this guy's lap and shit on him. Because I'm a baby, you sees.
Oh my god, that entire sequence. I don't know if I've ever been more thankful to see a character never return than that.
Oh, thank you. It's the best to see. Look, I know what I said is like, I am actually glad that Takahashi you just switched to doing the card game. I would just in a heartbeat taken just random bullshit sock matching games for 250 chapters if it meant Joji never showed up again. And thankfully he did not.
All right. Do we want to wrap this up?
Yes. So in the card bomber plot, Yugi has a line while they're at a water park where he sees Anzu in a bikini, and he specifically says even the card bomber would go crazy for Anzu's dynamite body.
And this is a kid who, like 2 chapters earlier, was matching his socks with little hearts on them and snowflakes.
I went through puberty between chapters.
Like, imagine in real life, he's just like, oh, Anzu's so hot. We'd all be rock hard over that dynamite blasted body of hers. And then in actuality, he's just like, oh, sweet, I got double diamonds on my socks. That's 4 matches in a row. I'm a psychic.
I will say that I am super glad that I did finally read the manga, because I feel like if you're a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan, that this should be like essential reading, honestly, because it is so weird to see where certain things came from that became the anime that is much more well known, the card game that is much more well known than the parts of the manga that don't get a lot of focus. It also gave me a new appreciation for certain characters. I know I made the comment about Anzu, and I was just like really repulsed by that at certain points. But I think the Jonochi comes across much better than he does in the anime at certain points. I really like his approach to things. There's an early chapter that is kind of one of his big redemption moments for bullying Yugi to start with, where this guy, I think he just steals Yugi's puzzle. I think that's what happens. And the guy, like everyone else in the series, whenever Yugi doesn't force the game on them, they force the game on whoever. They're like, fine, well, we're going to fight over this, but it's going to be a special game. We're going to hold these knives in our mouths. And he's thinking to himself, the knife that is in my mouth has a retractable blade, so I'm not even scared. So I'm just going to shove this knife to this guy's mouth and kill him. I don't care if I get a record from this. But Jonochi's just like, I won't be able to hold back from punching you if you've got a knife in your mouth, so you don't have to hold it in yours. I'll just hold it in mine. And then he kicks the guy's ass. Or like when they get the laser tag part of the first leg of Kaiba's obstacle course for them, and he's just really frustrated from going through this, laser tag course, so he just climbs up on top of the obstacles and then sneak attacks guy and kicks him in the head.
The guy, by the way, is like a trained, like, former Navy SEAL or some shit like that, and he's just like, I never expected someone to be this stupid.
And the guy's like, well, it's okay though. The guy's taking me by surprise, but I've got better reflexes. I'll be able to shoot him, and it just kicks him in the head.
You really can make a drinking game out of following the number of times characters would defeat Yugi at their game if they weren't such greedy assholes. Like the shoe guy who has a scorpion in the shoe and they take turns grabbing coins out of it. And eventually he's just like, I'll just stab the scorpion a bunch, and then that'll really rile it up for when Yugi goes for the next pick. You're like, why wouldn't you just play the game? Like, why would you throw the dice at Yugi's head instead of just dropping it and be like, see, I got a 2. Fucking, I think you now have to give me all your money or something like that. Like, there's so many people where you're like, if you would just not let your greed completely overwhelm you immediately, you would have won this.
Or like the guy who holds Anzu and Yugi plays a game with him, and he's like, each of us can only use one finger. And the guy's like, sounds good. Of course, I am not going to stop from pouring this liquor into my glass while we play. So Yugi's able to trick him into getting his cigarette to wanting to get his cigarette lit. So Yugi like lights a lighter and then puts it in the guy's hand, and he's like, "Oh no, the lighter's gonna fall and it's gonna get all over the alcohol's all over me because I didn't stop pouring for some fucking reason. And if the lighter drops, it'll burn me to death. I need to grab the lighter off of my hand and then I'll shoot him." And it's like, why did you
just shoot him?
Keep pouring? Why did you A, keep pouring the liquor, B, not shoot him immediately?
Like, there's so many points where you're just like, I don't even
C, just blow out the lighter by blowing on it.
Like, it's like this logic of like, none of us can use another finger. And I'm like, how the fuck do you drop the lighter without like moving your other fingers whatsoever too? It's like a very like,
shut up, I cheat, you're just not supposed to call me on it.
Again, that's maybe my favorite part of reading this is like, God, I love how much the Pharaoh just outright cheats at games. I don't know if I'm ever going to have a greater moment reading a manga than when he's just like, you said you rolled double crits, right? Oh, I don't see any dice anymore.
No takebacks.
No dice, no roll. I guess you're doomed to death and to damnation forever.
All right.
I highly recommend it. And again, if you want to check it out, the Shonen Jump website has it all out there. Go read all this stuff in its glory, guys, because I think you need to experience a lot of it for yourself.
We are going to have to go double time through our regular series because we unfortunately got a late start due to technical difficulties. So if there's something that you wish that we could take our time on, sorry. We're going to get into the recap portion of Weekly Manga Recap. My Hero Academia number 227, Memento from All for One. Gigantomachia has been fighting with the League of Villains, and he's very upset that Shigaraki has been declared All for One's successor because he doesn't think he's worthy. The doctor contacts Shigaraki through the radio, and he, gives them a little bit of background on Gigantomachia, and he says like, All for One knew he was going to be defeated by All Might eventually, so he hid this guy away, and now he has left him for you as a generous gift, but he's loyal to a fault, so loyal he doesn't think that Shigaraki measures up. So Dabi's like, well, okay, we better show him we're worthy then. And he throws a huge fireball at Gigantomachia that he just, eats, which prompts Toga to say, not very effective, which I'm pretty sure is just a blatant Pokemon reference. So Gigantomachia, he is a rock type. Fire is not very
obviously. Come on now. Dabi, you big dumb idiot.
The doctor uses a recording of All for One's voice to get Gigantomachia to calm down for a moment, and then he activates the bizarre ooze teleportation quirk, which takes everyone by surprise. Just one of All for One's quirks. He teleports them to his facility, where we see a bunch of the high-end Nomu are in these vats. Big 2-page spread showing a big part of the compound. Keep in mind, of course, this is before the one high-end Nomu was sent out to fight Endeavor. So they try and get a good look at the doctor, who kind of looks reminiscent of Eggman / Robotnik.
Yeah.
Hedgehog. Like a not fat version of him, basically, and with a
he looks a lot like the version I think that came out for the 2007 version, where they tried to make character designs a little bit more realistic.
Right. Although his mustache isn't nearly as big.
Yeah.
A little bit like that. And the doctor is kind of in somewhat the same mind as Gigantomachia about Shigaraki. That's the main point of the conversation that they have. We get introduced to kind of his character gimmick, which is that he's very paranoid and cautious. He doesn't reveal his name to them. He gives them a name, but it's not his real name. And he also doesn't let them see his face. He uses a strong backlight so that they don't get a good look at his features. And he even teleported them here so they don't even know where exactly they are. He's very cautious about that. But the point, of course, that he has to make is that, he has only called Shigaraki here because he has respect for All for One and his decisions. And he has, he's given so much to All for One by this point. And he's like, I've got nothing against you, but I need to judge if you are worthy of having this, because so far you have shown me Nothing. You're just a 20-year-old kid pawing around with the dregs of society, so what do you have to show me? Which catches Spinner's attention because presumably it ties into the previous chapter and his thoughts that, he was just, a nothing. So
a lot of people are pointing out that if you look at the first chapter of My Hero, the doctor that tells Deku he has no hope and no quirk for him looks a great deal like the doctor in this chapter as well. Particularly having like the same kind of like sprongs on the ends of his glasses. Maybe that is something.
Interesting. Might tie into people's theory that all for one is Deku's dad, which I hate. But... So, let's move on to Food Wars. 304, The Curse of the Divine Tongue. Well, we're here now, I guess. That big matchup that we were waiting for.
Still think we're getting another arc out of this, Nick?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so Soma, of course, last time challenged the assertion that Asahi had made that everyone thinks that I'm going to win, because Soma doesn't think that we actually get Erina off screen revealing to Megami and Soma that she has promised to marry Asahi if she loses to him. And she admits, like, I was, just really frustrated in the moment. But someone's like, hey, don't worry about it. Check out the tournament brackets. If I face Asahi in the semifinals and Eren is on the other side of the bracket, so I can just beat him before he ever even gets a chance to take on Erina. And Erina's like, no, you see, Asahi has a freaky ability and you have none. His power level is 3,000 and yours is 5. Like, the most shonen power level moments I think we've seen from Food Wars so far. His cross knives ability. You have no ability that is reminiscent of that. Come on. We also see Asahi talking with one of his underlings about his like, yes, I will marry the woman with the divine tongue, and that yes. He still doesn't talk about why he wants to do that. He just talks about the curse of the person with the divine tongue, which is that everyone who has ever experienced it basically goes through what Mon has gone through. We see a flashback of her leaving and then Senzaemon having to explain to a young Erina that she's gone. And Erina says, like, when will mother be able to come back home, though? And Senzaemon's just like,
at some point.
Eventually?
Did you hear at all about Wonder Park? The movie?
Yes, I had. Yes. She's gonna die.
Hold on.
No, she's back.
I was gonna say I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it, but I heard people talk about it, and it is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Like, sorry, your mom's gonna have to go away for a while, like implying that she has a deathly illness that's going to send her to the hospital, and years later she
be die? In 90 minutes.
She shows up at the end. I'm fine. You're like, fuck, man, that's a real dark move to force on kids. Then to just be like, nah, she's cool. Your mom just comes back home when she gets sick. You still built that theme park, right?
So, Erina basically has started to believe what Asahi has put in her ear, which is, if I win this tournament, mother will be disappointed. She already knows that I hold no hope of freeing her from her despair, and if that's the case, maybe the only way for us to find happiness really is to let Asahi Saiba win. And someone's like, not gonna happen. And he says it in a kind of selfish way, but it's one of those ways that's like you can tell it's not really his true feelings, because he's like, look, I know this is really troubling you, but that's not my business. That's your family, not mine. So I'm going to go get some rest before the matchup. Megami goes after him, and she says, do you really think that Eren is right? And Soma says, I don't know. But the divine tongue really does kind of suck, doesn't it? Whenever there's something wrong with your own dish, she, just uses it to really rip into you. Whenever she says something that she really wants to say, though, to the person who really needs to hear it, it doesn't budge an inch, though. Dual meanings of tongue. Very clever. So it's semifinals time. Asahi versus Soma. Asahi's like, this is gonna just, be a repeat of last time. I'm the only one who's going to, he says, the only one who's going to walk out of this with everything they want is me. And Soma says, maybe. If you beat me, you're free to do whatever you want. But let me just say this first. You can't make Nakiri happy. And it's go time. A bunch of guests show up in order to watch the proceedings. We get an upskirt shot of Ikumi for some reason. And big two-page spread to end the chapter. Asahi Saiba versus Soma Yukihira. Boom. Here we are. So
it definitely feels at this point that outside of this 2-page spread, nobody's really creatively behind this series is invested anymore. Like, the writing doesn't feel like anyone cares anymore. The art feels like they were like, I don't know, can I draw a panty shot at some point in this chapter? Because otherwise, it's like, who really gives a fuck at what's happening anymore? Mm-hmm. It just feels like everybody's kind of checked out on this series.
I want to make a note because I was curious, like, wow, we're already at this point with, Soma's big matchup for the arc. So I went back. I was like, where were we 1 year ago? March 26, 2018 edition of Weekly Shonen Jump had a chapter of Food Wars in which Tsukasa presented his venison dish in the 2-course finale of the Team Shokugeki. So we were approaching the end of that whole matchup. This arc has been going on for less than a year, and this is how quickly we've gotten to this point from Asahi's introduction at all.
I was gonna say I'd be curious to see how long it's been since Asahi was introduced to when we get to this chapter.
Yeah, so less than a year.
This is why I say I think this is the final arc, though. This feels exactly like when they were like, yeah, I know we kind of built up the German guy, but we just beat them off screen. It's okay, guys. We have to get to the USA match.
Well, we'll see. Let's move on to Eden Zero.
Let's talk Eden Zero, Chapter 36, the GIA, or the GIA. So last time Homura turned on them, but shocker, she didn't. It turns out that not only is Homura not evil, she's not even the person that we thought was Homura.
What a lame twist!
Yeah, no, Homura shows up to save everyone from a volley
of real
terrorists.
Homura.
Yeah, the real Homura. And she explains that when she showed up on the planet, she was in a jail cell. So she used that. She had to basically take a day to figure out how to get here, and then another day, or 1 day to escape, and another day to get there. So the person that is currently imitating her is not her whatsoever. There's a small joke how she's like, I wouldn't even take the appearance of a man if I came here, although I am kind of curious. And Jamie's just like, this is boring. So he cuts a bunch of people. He cheats and uses a super bomb. And everyone's like, how can we beat him? He's unstoppable. And Herbert's like, you're all stupid.
He uses cheats. And then Yambi's just like, well.
I'm like, just fucking, let's put our own fucking aimbot on. like, we can cheat too, man. And basically the only other thing of consequence is whoever the fake Homura is trying to run away from the real Homura. And the real Homura catches her and is like, who are you? What are you doing? And the disguise melts away. We find Amira, who is wearing a cat suit with fishnet trim to it. It's a very interesting attire. Also, a V-neck cut that goes down to her belly button. It's a very impractical outfit for a lot of reasons, I feel.
No wonder she changes her appearance all the time.
Yeah. But she explains that she belongs to the Galactic Intelligence Agency, the GIA. And this is maybe the only time where I actually have found Homura's stupid little gimmick funny. She's like, should you have kept that secret? And she's like, fuck. I think it's because I programmed all of your data into me that slipped through. And I'm like, that's kind of amusing.
So, I on paper like the idea of they are in an online game, so it's very easy for someone to infiltrate the group as an imposter pretending to be a member of them. I don't know why she needs to have a special thing that lets her take on the person's appearance and personality and memories and so on. If you're going to do that, though, like, you didn't need to have a virtual world thing. She could have just done that outside of it. So that kind of takes away from the one part of this that I actually like. And also, what did she actually accomplish by disguising herself as Homura? Did she actually learn anything? Did she set anything up? It seems like she blew her cover really fast if she was just going to, try and kill Shiki eventually. Like, what is she trying to do?
I think the goal was she's essentially like an undercover agent, and she was trying to get in with Drac and Joe, basically trying to become a mole in that. And Shiki's group was just a vehicle to get in touch with Jamie to then like a throughway. Like, there's no real reason it had to be Shiki's group. It doesn't seem. They just, I guess, happened to be the only other group of players that weren't getting mass murdered at the time. I don't know.
Did Jamie express surprise at all that Homura was not Homura?
I don't think he really cares. He immediately just starts saying, blah, 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 this is all boring, I'm going to kill everybody. So,
yeah,
I don't think
so it doesn't really sell that, does it?
No, and other people are mentioning this. This is also the same twist they used in the last arc, where it's like sister's evil. No,
it's not the real sister.
the real sister is good all along. Don't worry.
Don't need to confront any complicated character motivations. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is still like, this feels like such a weird other plot, completely divorced from everything else this arc was supposed to be about, that I almost feel like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't really know what the point of this subplot is, but I guess it exists.
Maybe there'll be a satisfying explanation next chapter.
Maybe.
Let's move on to Boruto number 333, Exceeding the Limits. Last time Kawaki managed to protect, I think it was Himawari from being hurt.
It was Kawaki, I think. Didn't Kawaki sacrifice himself? Not sacrifice himself, but he
put his arm in the way, and now his arm is all fucked up because of that. Didn't I say Kawaki?
You said Hinamori.
I said Himawari was protected by him.
Oh, okay. Well,
I guess
we're all wrong then.
Anyway, so Kawaki got in the way of the blast, and his arm is all messed up now. And remember, it's the thing that he can't just regenerate from. So Delta is really kind of pissed off because, like, what the hell are you doing? She says, fine, we're just going to bring you back, and Amato will repair you. So you have no choice but to come back with me so that your wounds will actually be recoverable. Naruto, meanwhile, is just like, hey, remember what I said? That, I was going to really get angry if you hurt the kids. Well, here we go. Speed lines! Speed lines, speed lines, speed lines! Oh my god, it's a montage of punching and kicking and all this stuff, and there's speed lines in all the backgrounds. Yay! Makes it really easy to read. So, Naruto is eventually just like, I'm gonna take you on. Here, giant Rasengan. And Delta's like, well, I guess that dispersed my eye beams, but now I'm just going to absorb it into my eyeball. And they're like, oh no. And then he's like, fine, super giant Rasengan. And she's like, well, fine, I'll just absorb that instead. And he just keeps making bigger Rasengans. And they're like, what is he doing? But Boruto says, my dad has something in mind. And Naruto's like, I've seen the filler episode of Dragon Ball Z where Goku used his Super Saiyan light to make that one guy who ate light explode. I just have to make you absorb it. And sure enough, eventually it becomes too much and she overloads and they've lost all functionality. She's lost connection with her drone. She can't use her eye beams. She can't do nothing. Then he's like, I knew that there had to be a limit. There had to be a physical storage because you kept on shooting back the jutsus that you absorbed exactly as they were. So there has to be a limit to them. So now, super giant Rasengan. Could have called it super duper giant Rasengan there, Naruto, but oh well. He fucks her up, and yay, he wins.
Yeah, I like it. I think it was a cool fight. Like, Delta seemed actually pretty strong. But when your opponent is the fucking main character from the other 700 chapter previous series that this was all about, you kind of have to make that character not look like a big goober. So I think this fight did a good job of kind of expressing both of those points. It makes, what's the group's name? I always forget it. Mara or some shit like that.
Kara, I think.
Kara. It makes them look interesting. If this is what one member could do, I'd be curious to see what other ones do, especially since this one is clearly like the fucking angry, over the top, very kind of like easily predictable one in the group. So it's a cool way to kind of like start things off.
Mm. The fight itself wasn't all that interesting to me, and I didn't really like the brute force method of dealing with her. But yeah, I don't have two really strong objections to it. All right, Hellworn Higuma, Chapter 13, Molten Copper, aka this series is definitely getting canceled. I'm kind of upset about this because it's weird because the series is at the point where it's basically almost explicitly acknowledging it's like, yeah, this guy wasn't supposed to show up now, but we got canceled, so he has to. Hikuma at one point even fucking says like, you said that you would come when my child turned 10, but I'm still a teenager. I don't have any kids at all. And he's like, well, yeah, but shut up. He basically just says like, something else happened, so I had to show up early.
You're gonna pop out a kid in the next 6 chapters, bud?
Turns out making friends with the girl is how you have a 10-year-old child immediately. Higuma, of course, is in a bad situation because one of his limbs has already been taken off. The guy establishes that he is, he gets off on, making Hell Wardens feel pain and suffer and all that stuff. Higuma forces Ayaha to go away, and she tries to get assurance from, oh gosh, I forget the little flame bull's name, but she's like, oh, Roku, that's it. So Roku says, like, go tell Uso what's happened. I'm going to try and get backup. And she says, hey, Higuma, he's strong, right? He's going to be okay, yeah? And Roku's like, yeah, he'll be all right. I mean, maybe not. Like when that guy killed his dad and aunt, that they were way stronger than Higuma is now. I don't know. So I'm going to go do work. So good job comforting the really worried girl. We see the fight unfold. Higuma gets fucked up even more because the wound in his arm, the guy left molten copper, which spikes him and travels up his arm and is approaching his heart, so it's going to kill him. Also, he uses his molten metal to take off one of Higuma's legs. And he's like, I'm just going to keep on taking off limbs until you only have the one arm that you need to summon Zaiju, and then I'm going to kill you. Higuma gets really determined, thinks about the pain that he's inflicted on demons that he has banished back to hell before, and he's like, all right, so what? And he uses his Zaiju to put a hand on his leg stump so that he can actually properly run towards the guy. And then all of a sudden we get a flashback to 6 years ago, and that's the end of the chapter.
Always a very good sign when you abruptly move over to your character's flashback. ... Let's move on to Lation Process 14. We're in the middle of learning the character's backstory.
At least this one doesn't feel rushed, though.
It doesn't, but it still feels like the same, like, general feel. Like, we had to get the backstory for this character out now while we had the chance. Maybe because we'll only have, like, the next 4 chapters to actually deal with Gavaldin or whatever. So we find out Neo's backstory. When he was a kid, he was very unpopular because he spent his recess doing math problems. And
hero.
Yeah, I empathize with them a little bit. I used to tell people, I was like, I kind of do long division for fun. Like, it's just kind of relaxing, And I like doing algebra because it's kind of like solving puzzles. People are like, nerd, you're a big math nerd. I'm like, no, you don't understand. If you put it on a shape, I'll sit there for an hour and a half and get the wrong answer. Like, I just like algebra. But he finds cleaning cloths are dropped from someone's house, and he's like, oh, here, I'll bring these in. And he meets a little girl, Tobari, yeah. So Tabari's like, hey, you're here. Why don't you come play with me? Come here. Let me show you this laptop. It has all this cool stuff. And it's pretty obvious that Tabari has some kind of condition that forces her to stay inside the house all the time.
She's got Marika disease.
Yeah, no one really knows specifically what, but she watches everybody from her telescope in the second story, and that's how she knows exactly who Neo is, because she's been watching him all this time, and she thinks that he's always kind of alone. And when she brings it up, he's like, no, it's none of your business, and she's like, oh, well, I kind of always empathized with you because you were alone and I was alone, so I kind of understood how you feel. And Maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe I shouldn't have done anything. So Neo starts
Well,
to apologize.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Neo starts to apologize, and she immediately is like, "Yay! I'm the one who feels the best of all." Because he was like, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done it. Like, you didn't do anything wrong." She's like, "No, I was wrong. I'm the one who feels best of all." And she's super excited. And she's like, "Here, you can take this laptop because you won't be able to see me every day. But if you have a computer, then you'll be able to talk to me every day. And if you have this laptop, you got to put everything into it. You have to be a master of a computer. You have to be the best computer person ever." So that's basically the story of, I guess, how he became a hacker. Is he was like, well, because he goes home, we see, and immediately starts studying everything. By the way, he looks like he's maybe 8 at this time.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there and he's like fucking immediately reading books on like how to assemble computers and how to like net code and shit like that. So he's like, oh, okay. And we get the origin for his name, Neo, which doesn't make sense for us because it's like a translation between like 3 different languages.
Right.
But essentially his name meant Neo to some extent, but that was taken. So he just used a 0 instead of an O.
I want to point out that Tabari does not actually put pressure on Arata or Neo to become a super hacker. She just says, like, you're really smart. I bet you could do all sorts of stuff on a computer, and if you do, then just tell me about it.
Yeah.
So I actually thought that this chapter was adorable as hell. Like, just the raw enthusiasm that Tabari has is actually, it's one of those things where it's like, it could so easily be really annoying because she's, just an excitable little girl. But there's something about her that makes her seem really nice and sweet. I really like the moment where, Neo kind of puts everything together because he's like, wait a minute. Because she says, like, I was planning on giving him the laptop for the very beginning. She's like, and so he's like, wait a minute. Did you drop the cleaning cloths outside of the house on purpose so that I would pick them up and come inside? And she's like, no, don't tell my mom I did that.
Shut up.
Fucking cover.
I'm fully expecting that the next chapter reveals that somebody, like maybe someone in the pharmaceutical industry or something like that, fucks her over, and like that's the reason why Neo goes after criminals online.
Right.
You see a sick girl in a backstory, and you're like, you don't make it to the current day. So we'll see what happens to that. It's a fine start to this backstory. As I said, I legitimately think this is the end of this series, so there's a part of me that's trying not to get too connected to it. But solid chapter.
All right, let's move on to the Last Saiyuki, chapter 4, Friends. This chapter features kind of it's kind of like revealing, like, this is how we're actually going to have Koharu, do stuff, basically. Ryunosuke explains to his dad that he did, when he went to school, actually reveal Koharu's existence to Shige, his best friend. And he's like, I don't think he would tell anyone else about her. I told him that he was the only guy I was telling about this, and he wouldn't just blab about that to me. But his father still says, well, we'll have to do something to make absolutely sure that he does it. And Ryunosuke's like, you're not going to, like, lock him up, are you? And his father's like, why do you think that I would do that? Do you really think I would do that? And Ryunosuke's like, yeah, you're so Machiavellian. Which is the most I have ever liked this kid. That's specifically what he says. But his father just explains, like, we just have to make sure that he doesn't reveal Koharu's existence to anyone. We have to be absolutely certain. So, just call him over and we'll take care of that. So Ryunosuke tries calling him, but it turns out that he's away at baseball camp, which was a detail that, he forgot about. And I love that his mom brings that, because Ryunosuke's like, did he tell you why I was absent? It's like, oh yeah, we heard you were overseas for an incurable illness. I'm so glad you're better. Great. There's a bit of a bonding moment between Ryunosuke and Koharu that's very sweet. Like, he explains to her, the history between himself and Shige, how They bonded over their mutual love of baseball, and then when his mom died, he was kind of like in shock because everything was different, and everyone was also treating him really differently, treating him with kid gloves, so to speak. And Shige was just like, "Hey, do you want to go play catch like we always do?" And he explains he was the only one who was acting the same as before, and it kind of brought me back to normality. It brought me back to Earth, and because of him, I was able to actually accept my mom's death. So very, very nice little thing. And Kaharu says, because Ryunosuke explains, friends are people that help each other out. Because Kaharu doesn't. That was the entire reason he explained the story, because she didn't even know what a friend was. So she says, I don't think I can ever make friends because I can only ever cause people trouble. I can't ever help anyone. And Ryu says, like, the other day I wet the bed. My dad helped me wash the sheets. My dad's feet stink. Yes, you've got this weird ability, but there is no one who doesn't cause others trouble. And that's really nice. That's a really nice way of looking at it. It's like, hey, you don't be so hard on yourself. It's a great message, I think. It's like everyone causes trouble for each other. Sometimes that doesn't mean that you have to feel guilty about it and not let yourself get close to people. Mm-hmm. And it's a really nice little bonding moment because he's like, I am proud of you, my little sister. And she thanks him for that. 2 more days pass. Shige is back from baseball camp. He is able to come and visit Ryunosuke. And when he steps through the gates of the shrine, we actually are introduced to a new component of the series, which is that we can actually see people's mo from Ryunosuke and his father and Koharu's point of view. And we see that Shige's mo is filled to bursting. It actually looks really ominous and threatening because it's cracking at the seams. It's got this huge black mass inside of it. And they're like, his fear is very close to materializing and it's going to turn into a monster and kill him. And he explains that there was this guy at school, this new kid at the camp named Toshiharu, and he told us this really vivid story. And his father tries to get him to explain more. And he's like, I don't want to say anymore because if I tell you the details, it feels like something's going to appear. And he looks terrified out of his mind. So the father brings Ryu and Koharu into another room, and he says Shige is really, really close to, letting this monster come out. And he's like, well, look, there's an emergency situation. So what we need to do is materialize it here so we can take care of it. So Koharu, in order to save Ryunosuke's friend, will need you to use your power. So getting to show her that she can use her abilities in a good way. I really like this chapter. There's a lot of great character moments, and it leaves me feeling optimistic about the direction of how these characters are all going to be able to do things going forward.
I think if this is the direction the series is going to be, I'll be able to enjoy it a lot more. If the notion is more like, hey, sibling stuff, and then occasionally trying to help people who are being tempted by this guy, I'm more interested in the idea of just turning this into a straight battle manga kind of deal.
Yeah. It gives it much more of an identity. Yui Kamio lets loose. Chapter 3. Whatever. Chapter 3 of Sparkly Visitor. It's a harem series now. Another girl showed up. She's got history with fucking Yui, and she wants to kick black Yui's ass, but she only ever sees white Yui. And so Kito's trying to keep her from discovering black Yui, but eventually she do. And that's basically where the chapter ends.
Since we saw Alice in her full glory, has there been a more Valley Girl character introduced into Shonen Jump?
Oh, absolutely.
This character's like, you know what? It's like, I can never forgive her.
When she finally comes across the black Yui, she's like, oh yeah, I remember you. It's nice to see you again. She says, this is where you die.
Oh my goodness. It's
and also, let's throw down.
Yeah, Nick, when 3 chapters are through, we had to decide whether or not we're going to continue talking about it or not.
I'm pretty sure I decided after 1 chapter was through.
We do the 3, the Jumpstart 3, as we call it. Nick, do you want to continue talking about this?
Absolutely not.
Well, I absolutely do. So it's going to the no. Okay, we're fine. We're losing it.
And here's the thing: it's not that I find the series bad. This is different from with Chainsaw Man, where I was just like so disgusted by it. There's like, I just don't want to talk about this asshole anymore and his stupid obsession with breasts. This is just I've got nothing to say about this. There is nothing to it that really seems to do anything for me, even though this is actually a pretty packed chapter in terms of like the interaction that we see between Kito and this girl. I don't want to see any more of any of this because it's so bland. So I don't have anything to say about it. So what's the point of putting in the recap?
The premise is pretty much worn thin in the 3 chapters we've discussed of it. So
yeah.
All right, so let's talk about We Never Learned. Then question 104, a little pale pink evokes memories of a pizza bet. Fumino gets a gift from
this has nothing to do with pizza. She's not even in this chapter.
No, but I think we've established that X stands for a pizza bet from now on. So every chapter We Never Learned.
So there ends up being a chapter title that's like, question 137. Chris will never win the X.
And I'm like, that's really specific. There's not even a character called Chris in this. So the chapter opens up with Fumino getting a gift from her father, who gave her some lipstick that was the brand that her mother really liked. And he said, I thought I meant to give it earlier. I thought I maybe missed my chance. And she realized, like, oh, you were giving me a birthday gift. So it's a little sweet little moment. And it's Ocean something. I forget. Ocean Tea, I guess, is all it's called.
Irresistibly kissable lips.
And I like that her dad is like, you're still too young for that kind of stuff. She's like, shut up. So she wears it in to the next study Mina have. It's just her and Asahi, and eventually Uega shows up. She starts like thinking like, oh wow, yeah, I'm wearing this lipstick. Oh yeah, I recognize it. Super cute. It's the kind for that irresistibly kissable lips, right? And she's like, no, I haven't even had my first kiss, excluding the Meowpolian thing. And then of course the like, I almost assume there's some like 4th dimensional like sinister theory behind this
one kid.
This child, the mother and child that walks by, who's just like, here's a reminder of the wackiness you guys are involved in. Because Asahi's like, oh hey, it's Meowpolian Z. Remember that? Oh man, wasn't it funny when Uego was in that costume walking around during the school festival?
And now we know why Sumi is the only one there. So.
And you're like she was just like, ha ha ha, that was funny. Says nothing else. So then
Fumino goes dead quiet. She's like, okay.
Like, she doesn't even give like a specific example. Yeah, she's just like, remember when that thing happened? Ha ha, that was great. And then nothing. Uega shows up, and of course, he's just like, good to see you guys here. Fumina's like, yes, that is correct. He's like, that's weird. She seems kind of off. He's like, oh hey, you're having a little problem with this math problem, and she like flash snaps herself off the desk and starts rolling across. He's like, I kindly appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I must go now. He's like, what the fuck's happening? She goes to the washroom, washes her face off, and she's very upset because she's like, or not upset. She's very conflicted because she's like, she just discovered that what she thought was that weird kiss is with the person who she has very complicated feelings about right now. Cut over to Uega, who's like, something's up with her. Because Asumi's just left as well. I guess Asumi was just like, oh, fuck it, I'm gone.
She was like, I got shit to do. Bye, bitches.
Yeah, there's a new fetish event going on at the maid cafe.
She said specifically, I've got to go to work, so you're not too far off.
She's like, I don't know, it's like slutty cyborg nurse night or something. So Uega's like, I wonder what's up with Fumino.
Slutty cyborg Saturday.
It's Tuesday. Yeah, but that's not alliterative. And he's like, oh, this lipstick. She must have been wearing it, and I didn't notice that she was wearing it, and she's really upset about that. So sorry about that.
It's one of her just, reading a woman's heart tests. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Fumino sits down. He's like, you look great with that. Oh, you're not wearing lipstick. Huh. I guess maybe I was mistaken about everything. And then they do that thing where they
Complete
talk
your
to each
sentences.
other.
Stop using use actual proper names instead of pronouns.
You know that thing, Uega? You knew about that thing, right? He's like, yeah, I totally knew about that thing. Well, how did you feel about it? I guess I felt really good. Like, it's just enough of a vagueness that they have a misunderstanding that she's talking about that he must have realized that they had that fake kiss. And she's just like, oh, she's really fucking hammering on this fucking lipstick thing. I mean, come on. Get off me here. I fixed that math problem for you. There's even a moment though where she's like, "Oh, what'd you think about it?" And he's like, "I don't know. I thought it was really neat." So she's like, "Neat? You thought kissing me was neat?" And she's very conflicted about all this. Look, eventually they both realize the situation that's going on.
I do have to say, there is a pretty hilarious note in between though, because he's like, "Okay, give me another chance then." She's like, really? Okay. And she like, leans in and he picks up her lipstick and applies it to her.
Very well too. He's really, and I do like how he puts it on. And he's like, huh. All right. Very nice lipstick, Famino. It looks great on you. So yeah, they have a moment where they're like, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. That was a really weird, confusing kind of like mixture of things." But we do see that Famino is slowly starting to get closer to the level where she realizes those feelings for Yueg are actual, and she might have to finally kind of confront that.
Mm-hmm.
There's not actually a ton of like real consequence to this chapter, but I do feel that that's slowly the direction we're pushing in.
Yeah, it's one of those like it's a misunderstanding kind of chapters for this, romantic comedy. Oh, shenanigans ensue because people don't communicate properly. And in that sense, it's whatever. But on the other hand, at least it wasn't built around fan servicey sex jokes, so it was pretty innocent overall, and I did appreciate that. So we went to Dr. Stone, Z equals 99, Kingdom of Science photo journal. So this is a big time skip or time lapse chapter. We basically a full year passes in the course of this chapter as the Kingdom of Science sets about constructing their ship so that they can voyage across the ocean. So we see a lot of different things like the stuff that they the tools that they have to create in order to do this. We see this one really cool device that I was completely unfamiliar with. It's this man-powered copy machine. Which basically amplifies the movements of your arm in order to reproduce the same movements on a much grander scale further away. So basically, they're like, "Oh, this is what we'll do in order to like sketch out the patterns so that we can actually recreate all the parts from the scale model that we drew or created." So cool stuff. The photo journal, of course, is being prepared by Minami with her camera and stuff. So she is a big part of this. We see her interacting with a lot of different people over the course of this. One of the details that I like is that a couple of different times there are athletic things going on, and Kohaku is moving so fast that she just turns into this ghostly blur in the picture. Because it's a primitive camera, so it doesn't capture movement very well. Mm-hmm. We see that they've like started up a science academy for the village, in particular for like the kids and Magma, who is like a child in many ways.
Basically is, yeah.
We also see that Minami is getting worried as she's preparing this photo journal because she's thinking that this year could be their last together, which of course makes sense as she explains at the end, where just like there's no guarantee that all you guys are going to be able to return from this voyage that you're setting out on. So she's very worried about that. Senku is of course working hard, creating different things. They also have to get some silk so that they can do stuff before setting out to sea. They also make silk bathing suits from that, so we get our fan service of the chapter. So you get Yuzuriha and Ruri in sexy poses, and then Kohaku turning into a blur in the background because she's swimming really fast, which I do like. There's also a nice just little shot of just a bunch of the photographs that Minami has taken just up on a wall. So you see like, all these friends that they've made on the way, basically. And as they're getting set to set off, they're like, "Oh man, I can't believe that we've made it." Minami gets really emotional because they're all setting off together. So she's like, at least can I, take one last picture? And Seku's like, oh, come on, I want to, no. But she gets really, really emotional there, and she's like, well, look, it's not going to be the last time we see each other. I'm 10 billion% sure we're going to solve the big mystery and return from the other side of the world. But she still wants to take a picture.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Francois, ultimate foresight person that they are, knew that this was coming, and so they have actually set up this mechanism to have an automatic camera timer so that everyone could be in the picture, including Minami. And they take this one last picture. Everyone's standing in front of this huge ship. Gives you an idea of the scale of the thing, just how massive this goddamn thing is. And we just get this one final announcement in this 2-page spread, which is split up into a bunch of different panels to show, all the different characters involved, that on September 10th, the year 5741, the Perseus was completed. And so we're now going to get into the next leg of Dr. Stone, with them actually voyaging, it seems.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to this chapter. I mean, they speed through inventing 7 things. They're like, we invented chocolate, we invented soap, we invented copy
snowboarding.
Yeah, they invent a lot, but I really do like the way it's all framed with the idea of this journalist who's kind of snapshotting and telling the story of the events leading up to this, and sort of that ongoing sense of dread that something could go wrong, and these happy days are slowly being counted by, and then it being no, I believe we'll return, and getting this nice moment of the christening of this ship and everything, and also that it's got its big stupid giant gorilla face as well, that they someone had to be we gotta make sure that's in there. So
they're like, Seki, we don't really need to put a face on it. It's like, yes, we do.
So this actually makes constructing the vessel a lot harder. Well, get to it, buddy. So I enjoy all that a lot. I think it was a really good chapter.
Yeah, I really like the framing device of the photojournal to show this montage.
All right, let's jump over to the 7 Deadly Sins, chapter 304, The Executioner's Wish. Zeldris betrayed them, betrayed the Demon Lord, and is going to help protect the heroes in this. So Demon Lord resurrects the monster that was fighting them before, calling it the Fleeting Hermit this time. It's still a very creepy monster with the weird face. So
never trust anyone whose shoulders are higher than their mouth.
It's a good rule of life. And we also get that the
wise insights from Nick Freeman.
That's what goes on your tombstone as your epitaph.
Never trust anyone.
Inside the fight with Melodius, the Demon Lord's going on. Melodius has kind of concentrated the energies around him into these beads of pure darkness, kind of based after King's condensed power move. But it's a lot stronger, and it's actually really effective against the Demon Lord. So Melodius is like, hey, you guys being here is giving me strength. So it's cool. Knowing you guys are out there is all I need. You guys go help Bond. And we kind of get that moment that a lot of RPGs do, or manga like this, where every character gets to say their thing to the hero as
the final parting word as you set off on your own.
Yeah, so they all go ahead and do that. They all say hey, Melodius, we really like you. Look, we're kind of zapping through things for time, but all of them are very kind of nice and sweet. Melodius is don't worry.
Nice short little sentiments too. None of them have to give big speeches. So.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, you guys don't worry, I'll handle it from here. Back in the real world, Zeldris is fighting against the Fleeing Hermit, but he is getting some damage done. Bond's trying to fight back. Eventually, Zeldris uses his Omnibus Nebula technique to cut the Fleeting Hermit right in half, which is actually pretty sweet because he just pulls it in straight close and then just obliterates it with the swing of his sword.
Well, I love the moment where he pulls it in, and then right before that, he's just and then blows it away.
It's a very cool moment. But then the Demon Lord in Melodius' body strikes him down with magic, and everyone's like, how? How is that possible? He's supposed to be immune to magic. The Demon Lord's like, dude, I gave that to him. I could take that shit away. So Zeldris looks like he may be out for the count at the moment, but as he's going down, he says to himself, Melodius, I know that you, if anybody, could change everything. I'm counting on you. And we see Melodius hitting the Demon Lord with the big attack and saying that he's going to end it with his next strike. So we seem to be very close to the end of this fight and potentially the end of the 7 Deadly Sins as a whole.
Oh my god, did it get canceled too? No, actually, it feels like it's just, naturally concluding.
They ran out of things to base, like religious things to base groups off of.
7 holy virtues.
They did that.
No, they didn't.
Well, that's what all the
Shh! Don't. No. It's different. Based on I don't know the tenfold path. I don't fucking know. Go to different religions. I'm sorry. I just really like the series.
Nah, I get it.
This is a really good chapter. I don't have a whole lot to say about it though, because it's just a very straightforward, dramatic, and action-heavy chapter. And there's, not a whole lot to take note of outside of some cool shit happened. So let's move on to the Promised Neverland, chapter 128. I've decided. We pick up where we left off in the conversation between Norman and primarily Emma. Also, kind of Ray. Ray is there too, but he's writing in his journal about how smart he is at the moment. Not paying attention to him. Norman, of course, is telling him, is like, look, I know that you have your ideals here, but listen, do you think that your superheroes never embezzled money from the government? You're living in a fucking fantasy land.
Very topical.
If you haven't heard about the rant that Zack Snyder went on about people who don't like that Batman killed people, then it's amazingly amusing to me. Anyway, he says that, look, we can't just, it's just not going to be that easy because, not everyone shares those ideals. We get the cover page for the chapter, which I do really like. It shows Norman in isolation by himself in the testing facility while Emma and Ray were traveling and, working together with their family. So, showing like this is why Norman is, this is kind of how the difference between Norman and Emma is that Emma is surrounded by her friends. Norman is just kind of off on his own. So, and Emma says, you're right, but you're only correct in terms of probability. Because, she says like all the stuff that you're talking about, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. You're most likely correct, but that doesn't mean that there is no chance. And she rightfully points out if we just, went with what was most probable, then we would never have escaped from Gracefield House to begin with. So there is a chance that we can do this, and I can't give up on that chance, basically. So she says that she has resolved that they can go with Norman's plan because he's already set into motion, but she says, I'm okay up to where you defeat the king and the aristocrats and release the farms, but I don't want you to kill the king and aristocrats right then. I want to use their blood to increase the number of demons that don't have to eat humans. Meanwhile, I'll go to the 7 walls and create a new promise with and I'll create a route to escape to the human world. Once we change all the demons into beings who don't degenerate and destroy all the farms, then let's go to the human world with all the children. And Norman's like, that's a fairy tale. It's like, the series is called The Promised Neverland. Shut up, Norman. He points out all the problems with her plan and how unlikely it is to succeed. He also says, even James Rattray couldn't get to beyond the 7 walls. That place doesn't even exist. And Emma's like, no, I know where it is. We found out where the 7 walls is in the past year and a half. We gather what's necessary. As long as the conditions are right, we can go anytime. So basically, Emma is just like, look, we can do this. You say that I can't have it my way unless we know more. Well, then I'm going to go find that stuff out. I'll go find out everything. If I make a new promise, if I can come back, you'll reconsider it if I can come to you with that information proving it. And Norman's like, I haven't agreed to anything yet. What do you mean if you come back? Because, of course, he doesn't want her to set off and do this. Ray chimes in at this point and says, we know where the entrance is, but we don't know where the exit is, which, of course, really worries Norman. It's like, this is way too risky. But Emma says, look, the first head of the Rattray Crown was able to return 1,000 years ago. There must be a way to come back, so I can come back. I'm the one who doesn't want the demons eradicated, so I'll be the one to take on this simple burden. And of course, Norman doesn't want his bae to go away and possibly die. But Emma is just like, listen, you're always by yourself. You have so much on your shoulders, but you don't have to be a god. Tell me the truth. This is really tough on you. Do you really want to do all this? Do you really want to annihilate the demons? I don't want you to go far away bearing everything on your own again. And Norman thinks it over and is like, okay, I understand. I'm not going to change how I feel about this. I'm not canceling my plan. I'm not delaying it. I'm not going to hold off on it. If you want to stop the annihilation, then you have to return before I kill the family in the 5 region houses. And she's like, okay. And Ray's like, I'm going to. And that they part ways basically once again. And Emma says to Ray as they head off, I've decided, I know now what I have to do, and I won't waver anymore. Norman still looks worried as they set off. And Emma's like, I'm never going to let Norman be on his own again. And Ray's like, okay.
I'm here too. I like this chapter a lot. I really like how Emma comes across. I do also like that it looks like we are kind of diverting slightly away from the idea that Norman was just going to be an unrecognizable kind of villain going forward and too much of an extremist. I like that they're showing some hesitance there that the bond these 3 shared as kids really is kind of holding strong for him. And even though he might have some hesitation about really following it, there's a dedication on their side to be like, hey, we're about everyone coming through together. So I feel like, we're going to do everything we can to keep Norman from going through with this kind of extreme tactic he's thinking. I feel like it kind of stays true to what the core of the series was about, while also presenting like a new interesting twist with the way Promised Neverland's been kind of dealing with conflicts in the recent kind of small arcs.
Interestingly, Norman is basically an antagonist here already. He is presenting an obstacle that Ray and Emma have to overcome. It's just that, it's a time limit more than anything else. And it's a new set of consequences. It's interesting that the consequences here are not the world will end if they don't accomplish this. It's, well, all the demons are going to be genocide, and Emma doesn't want that. Emma wants to not have her friend kill all of her other friends. And that's interesting. I'm sure that's not going to be the stakes through the rest of the series. I'm sure that something else is going to complicate matters. But I do really like the dynamic that we've got here where Ray and Emma and Norman are all best friends, and Norman is kind of actually opposed to them. Yeah. So it's an interesting way of going forward.
Very much so. All right, let's move real quick onto Black Clover, page 198, the 5-leaf grimoire. So last time Asta and were very strong, and they very much believed that they were going to become the Wizard King. So they managed to kind of overpower a lot of what the devil did. But the devil just heals. He says heal, and he's fine. So he's like, cool.
He barely put a scratch in his arm to begin with.
Yeah. So he's like, that's very cool, you guys. And he kind of talks them up a little bit. We see a glimpse that Rades and I want to say his name's like Volthos or Volos, something like that. They're over there watching things kind of happen from afar. And they're like, oh, hey, kind of ironic. It's, Leashed is being sacrificed in the same way that he kind of sacrificed all of us after we were done being useful to him. So kind of a conflict for them. The Demon Lord or the devil starts watching Leash's grimoire. Or I guess it's his grimoire. I'm not really sure who is it. I think it's Patri's grimoire. But it gains a 5th leaf. And he's like, it's the strongest it'll ever be now. And I have both my body of perfection and the strongest grimoire. So I'm going to take this and leave. Ha ha ha. Your empty elf heart was so useful. Ha ha ha. And he's ready to leave. But we
also find out that Asta's grimoire seemingly was created in this same way. Mm-hmm. So,
and there's also a little note too. Basically they try to stop him, but Patry has become a dark elf. His heart is so obsessed with evil and conflict now that he can't be stopped. So he kind of holds them back as the devil's like basically flying away. And he even thinks to himself, to the devil inside of Asta, if you don't steal that body soon, then you're going to die here along with it. So implying that the consciousness inside of Asta is kind of allowing himself to take over the body slowly, one piece at a time, so that maybe he could just steal the whole body at one point. Ooh.
Also, is a hybrid like Charmy is. So as someone pointed out to us on Twitter, Karita Prime did, that probably means that he's going to have 2 magic types too. Because why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
He'll have wind and light, and I don't know. Maybe he's like, I got copy magic too, so any magic that I need. Or hold on, what's another way they could do copy? Because there's copy magic, and then there was
painting magic, mirror, yeah,
mimic magic. He could
do reverse magic. So he does the opposite element of whoever someone
Oh.
does, but he also still has every access to every type of magic in that way.
So with that, he could have access to potentially anything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a big attack that's coming. Patry is preparing to use it. Evil Patry, I don't know if we need to change his name. And both Nozel and Yami are kind of noticing this, and they think to themselves, that magic.
Yeah.
So a big attack is coming.
I don't know why the devil's running away. Just kill everyone, dude. Like you're the devil.
He's gotta float away to Hueco Mundo, where he will finish his plan for the something.
I can understand leaving Asta alive if it's like, well, that guy's gonna turn into a devil, so fine. But it was like you totally outclass all the other guys. Just like kill them. Mm-hmm. Whatever. One Piece. It's chapter 937. Yukimaru on Bandit's Bridge. We cut around to a couple of different things just to recap them, but the primary point of this chapter is the fight between Yukimaru, the guy with all the swords, the giant guy that Zoro was fighting on the bridge, and Zoro. We get some stuff some information from this guy about Ryuma, the samurai that Zoro defeated, or the soul of the samurai that Zoro defeated in Thriller Bark in order to get his Shusui. And why the sword is black is apparently special. But before we can get into the fight between them, suddenly we see that Otoko and I believe that's supposed to be. I think that's Otama. No, it's not. I forget who that's supposed to be. Anyway, they're running away from a new character, a psychotic assassin guy who fights with a pair of sais named Hitokiri Kamazo. So Zoro steps in to help them because he sees that they're in trouble. The woman begs him to help, and he's like, well, I hate to see, a child and a woman killed in front of me, so sure, I'll do it if you give me a good meal and a drink. Cool guy Zoro. Kamazo is there to kill them on behalf of the Shogun, of course. They start fighting, and amusingly enough, as they're fighting, Yukimaru keeps on interfering because, we were engaged in a duel. I'm not going to stop fighting you just because you started fighting someone else. So I was like, read the room! Eventually, this causes a really untimely opening, and Zoro takes one of the sais right through his chest. But this ends up actually helping him because he just flexes his muscles so that the guy can't get loose. He forces the guy to let go of the scythe and then rips it out and puts it in his mouth so that he can use three sword style and uses his onigiri to take the guy out.
It is a very sweet and very cool kind of finisher.
Yeah, it's awesome. So really awesome moment in this chapter. I'm glad that we're spending more time following Zoro for right now. And there's some other stuff to take note of, little details here and there, and the stuff with Luffy and Queen, and Chopper is worried about Big Mom, of course, being with them and stuff. But it's all about just the fight between Zoro, the two fights rather that Zoro is involved in. So.
Yeah, I think there's also meant to be some kind of significant foreshadowing here to the idea of swordsmen with black blades, that it's potentially something that maybe just after infusing it with so much hockey or so many battles. That's why it, became black.
Slaying so many enemies or something like that.
Mihawk's blade was notably black as
well.
There are some stuff there that I think we're going to get into. This chapter was really engaging, and it reminded me again. I was like, fuck, I kind of really wish we were just following Zoro for a lot more of this arc. We're in Samurai Land. Why are we not following Zoro everywhere?
Yeah. In full agreement, especially after this chapter. So
dug it a lot.
All right, let's name our favorite series and MVPs for this week.
I'm going to give my favorite chapter to Dr. Stone this week, and my MVP I'm going to give to Emma, because I really, really liked how she came across this week.
Yes. I'm going to give my favorite series to The Promised Neverland, because I really like the conversation, the direction the conversation takes, and where it seems to be headed. I'm going to give my favorite character to Ryunosuke in the Last Saiyuki. I really like the conversation that he has with Koharu, and it makes him seem a lot more likable.
Cool. And for our audience, they said Dr. Stone was their favorite and Zoro is their character of the week, which makes quite a lot of sense. I can see
Did have a really awesome moment and cool fight. So,
Yep.
All right, that is going to do it, guys, for Weekly Manga Recap. We want to thank you guys for the live recording. We had to start late this week because of technical difficulties, but we try and start the show Mondays at about 7:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. If you want to stay updated on when we're starting and all that stuff, you can follow us on Twitter. Your hosts are at Roloti and at Nick F. Time. And, of course, the official podcast account is at WMR Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Smashcast.tv/Roloti, Twitch.tv/Roloti are the streaming platforms. You can find us on YouTube as well as on iTunes and on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com for all of our past episodes. Check those out. Subscribe, comment, rate, all that stuff so you can help out with the algorithm and we can rise to the top of the hobby section, defeat the woodworkers. If you would like to leave some feedback for us, if you'd like to ask us a question for a future Q&A episode, you can do that by sending us an email to weeklymangarecap@yahoo.com. If you want to make a recommendation, then drop into the Discord server. There is an entire chat dedicated to making recommendations where Ninja X3i also links to a Google Doc where we keep track of all the recommendations. People chime in with their opinions and add in kudos for and all that stuff. And it's also where the polls and stuff are kept track of for audience's favorite chapters and all that stuff. Speaking of recommendations, a few different people recommended this series, so we are going to try it out. It is called, I've got to look this up because it's a kind of a weird name in it. It's called Please Don't Bully Me, Nagatoro. It's about a high school kid who encounters an underclassman at his school who is really hard on him and starts teasing and bullying him. Apparently, it's a romantic comedy because he starts to develop a crush on her despite the way that she mistreats him. So I read one chapter of it. It seems really interesting. So
Interesting. All right. Well, I guess that's what we're going to be discussing then. And we'll talk about that. I actually had to double check. Is next week Golden Week?
I don't know.
Hold on. Let me double check. I know we're not getting a Dr. Stone chapter until April 7th. Let me just
I think it's just on break, though, because I saw some others saying that they were coming out next week. So
yeah, let me just double check.
Nah, Golden Week's at the end of April and beginning of May.
So we're just not getting a Dr. Stone next week then. All right, cool. So I just want to double check that then. I don't know. Do we have anything we want to end off on, Nick?
Any
appropriate?
Oh well, we do have to. I mean, we do have to also thank Infamous Planet and Steven.
No, fuck him.
So. Fine.
No, Steve Man's great. He put together the sexy Yugi image. That's our title card this week. I love it. I don't prompt Steve Man with what to draw. I'm generally just like, you do you, my man. And a lot of times because of his, preference, he'll draw sexy women. I love that he knew, though, that sexy Yugi was absolutely the way that you had to go about this. Because I don't know if you know, Nick, but Yami Yugi is like, like April O'Neil is kind of like that, like the cartoon crush a lot of guys had when they were younger.
Sure.
Yugi is that for women, for people who are attracted to men, because I cannot tell you the number of women I've
put leather pants on that boy. Yeah.
Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of women and like the question comes up like, who was your cartoon crush? Unprompted. I think like 5 or 6 women I know have been like, oh, Yami Yugi, like in a heart, like instantaneous, where they're like, oh no, I've been holding on to that one for quite a while. And I'm like, really? And really reevaluate.
So you would totally pull an Anzu and just like get yourself into trouble just so that he would come out and save you, huh?
And they're like, oh fuck yeah, I'd let a fucking serial maniac blindfold me and hold a gun to my head while he plays this weird lighter game with a bottle of liquor. Look, the fucking specifics don't matter. I'll sit in that Ferris wheel as he plays clock solitaire using all of his card gaming skill to get me out of there. God,
anyway.
That's gonna do it, everybody. Goodbye.